on mobile.
This week on the Old School RuneScape update, the whys behind the lack of new Pride content surfaces, and the community has made their thoughts clear. We discuss Pride, why it shouldn't be a conflict, and why it's important. Also, Yama changes, mobile in 2025, and Cireon's quest game. This is the Old School RuneScape Update, episode 77, recorded Saturday, June 14th, 2025. Just be you. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Old School RuneScape Update. Cireon and myself are here, as we are every other week now. Of course, this week, it wouldn't be an episode of OSRS Update without a big, juicy, spicy topic. Now, would it? No, of course. But
we've had sailing, we've had Yama, and now we have rainbows.
That's right. You know, I'm glad through my tenure of Old School RuneScape, I've come to mostly understand the old school community, and I feel like I can say that because numerous of you listeners have told me that, and we'll get into some of the pictures of what this means for the big story of the week in just a moment. But if you want to follow along, full show notes over at update.show/OS. We have a friends chatting game that can be found at BitsBytes, and the community Discord is at update.show/Discord. All right, so it's June. It's Pride Month in non-dictatorial parts of the world, and there is no new Pride content this year in game. And a story blew up at the tail end of last week about a series of anonymous Jagex developers going to the media and mentioning that, the reason there's no new Pride content in either game is because it was a decision made up high by the company management. And full disclosure on this is something that we were looking at for both podcasts last week, but my personal journalistic type, I prefer to avoid the anonymous sources if I can, because that's not typically the type of podcasting that I do. But the story this week blew up in the media, and the reason we're talking about it is because it has become a community issue on the old school side. And that's particularly also the main reason why we chose OSRS Update rather than RSBNB Update as the venue to talk about this week.
Hey, if you're here from the RS3 site because you want to hear our take on it, welcome, stick around.
Yeah, it's going to be a good show in addition to this. And
we're also going to talk about more upbeat things, I promise you.
Yeah, that's right. And, I look at this and I can say, I see that the corporate pendulum is what I'm going to call it in terms of social norms and acceptance has swung back to the point it was at probably around 2008 or 2009 compared to the swing it took over the intervening years. And, it's not just Jagex that I'm seeing this with. I was following news across the country. I'm from Canada. And one of the stories that came across my tech news was actually that Google Canada pulled out of the Pride Toronto event in association, or rather alongside also pulling out with Home Depot of all countries. Now, you could understand Home Depot doing that, but the fact Google Canada is doing it as well really underscores that this is something that is moving across the vast swaths of the corporate spectrum worldwide now that we're seeing, and we're seeing it also here at Jagex with this, and the community has taken note of that.
So as much as for a lot of people this is new, well, yeah, somewhat new, right? Like the fact that there's a massive crackdown on this. I will go ahead and heal people a little bit from their America centrism here, in that we already have a few countries in Europe that have have had this battle going on for like the last few years. Specifically, Hungary
Yeah.
has sort of big problems on this. Poland used to have some anti-LGBT zones. I think that has been reverted by the current government right now, though. We'll see where that goes with the new elections outcome. So it's not a new trend, unfortunately, but yeah, it's definitely gotten bigger.
Yeah, and the reason you point that out is because if you look at the PC Gamer article that's listed in the show notes, about 2/3 the way down, they have Donald Trump's mugshot up there, and that of course creates the North American connection to it. And
it is sort of what makes it more mainstream. But I just want to point out that it's unfortunately something that's been going on for a while.
Yeah. And I mean, if you look at what the right-leaning people are talking about in general, the people who are specifically right-leaning and not necessarily looking, to work with centrists and whatnot, those people have pointed to, for the last number of years, like you mentioned, countries like Hungary, countries like Poland, in certain cases, for making moves against what has become known as social progress, really, over the last 15 years ish or so on these issues.
Yeah.
And I think when we look at this and we say, well, what does it have? What place does this have in the video game? And this will be real quick on this. If you look at certain NPCs that are out there, specifically, the first one that comes to mind is Armadillo. In game is openly gay. That's something that has just been in
RS3, and I don't think it's been made canonical in.
No, but it's still the same RuneScape universe.
Sure, yeah.
And the trick when doing any kind of this representation, and I'm sure you agree on this, is that doing it naturally and organically is the best way, so that when it's there, it is appreciated.
The best Pride event that we ever had, and I am sorry, I forgot whether this was RS3 or old school. I think it was RS3, but I might be wrong. It was a story of somebody who wanted to be a temple knight.
I don't know which one. I don't know which one that is. That might be Tales of Pride on RS3 in 22.
Let me see if I can quickly find it by just looking back at the Pride events of previous years.
Yeah, and
but yeah, so that was that was my favorite Pride event. The interesting thing is that it must have been RS3. Let's see. Yeah, okay, I can't find it. It's fine. But that was a story about someone who wanted to become a temple knight, and it was all about dealing with sort of not feeling that their parents were supporting them or proud of them, and nothing about the entire LGBT space was mentioned at all during that entire event.
I remember that now.
And yet, it was probably the best allegory that we have had for Pride ever, right? Because that's really what Pride is. It's an event that tells us that, you can be proud of who you are, whoever you are. And you should never need to hide who you are, right? That's sort of the underlying message of Pride. I think we've also had events where we had to do a bunch of matchmaking, and that included a variety of relationships as well, right? Including what normal people, I guess, would call normal. If you can summarize it that way. So, to me, sure, Pride has been largely seen as a LGBT event, and of course the Pride event started as LGBT protests originally. but that doesn't mean that it cannot apply to everyone. Like, think about it. Pride is a celebration of the fact that we live in a world where even if you are slightly different from the norm, which everybody is slightly different from the norm in one way or another, right? You can be proud of that and you can be that different in public, right? You're not going to be judged for it. That's what Pride really celebrates. And I find it hard to understand why somebody can be against that.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the things that I've seen on that have come to using one specific argument or another, whether that stemmed from something that was a political choice or a religious custom, to in effect highlight that motive and feeling going forward when it comes to Pride season in general. And we saw a lot of that this week as well, with the questions that always pop up. Well, pride's a political thing, isn't it? So why shouldn't we be championing? And I'm playing devil's advocate here. The thing is that has been said is, why shouldn't we be championing Jagex for doing this? Because it's inherently a political statement, is it not? And the answer is that people can make it that if they want to, but it inherently is not.
No, like, making Pride political is the same as like making any group of people or many, like, it's making Christmas political. It's like making the 4th of July political. Like, I don't know, right? Like, it's like, yes, politicians will use each and every tool that is available to them, and if one political grouping thinks they can get an edge over the other political grouping by using LGBT rights as a big selling factor to make sure that all of the LGBT people will vote on them, they will. But like,
and you hit
ultimately, it's not a political
issue. Mm-hmm. Is that a lot of places, the southern U.S., parts of Alberta, where I'm from, the sort of Christianity that we see in some cases is evangelical, and in the past it has been used as Pride has been used as a political event, and the jumping off point has been evangelical religious policies, and people have run away with it from that perspective.
Like, when I think politics, right? We can have political disagreements as people. We can disagree on what policy should be introduced to make the country better, right?
Yeah.
But that is purely opinions, and we can talk about economics, right? We can talk about finances.
And let me give an example of when Pride could be political. It's if you live in a town and they want to make a crosswalk, like a street crosswalk, rainbow.
I
think that comes down to whether or not the political council at hand wants to do it that way, and that unfortunately puts it into that political arena there.
Yeah, but like, the point I was trying to make is that I am completely open to having disagreements and open discussions about what people want and what people's opinions are, because I have a choice in the matter, right? I can choose from one day to the next to switch from a socially liberal to a socially conservative point of view. If I do that too often, people aren't going to believe me anymore, but I can, right?
Yeah.
If somebody gives me good arguments, I might change opinions. If somebody is gay, they're not suddenly not going to be gay. That's not how that works. So the fact that we are...
And that's the core we're getting to with this, is that definition of pride that you gave about how it could be represented in Take That One event. Because of that, it's not an inherently political thing.
It is not. And if you make it a political thing, and if you're making it into a point that says, I think LGBT people should not exist. That's like, you're literally erasing people that exist. It's hateful. It is outright hateful, right? And coming back to the original thing, like I don't mind not having the Pride event in the first place. If there are valid reasons, there's not enough dev time because sailing and Violent War is taking up everything, and we just need to cut down on live events, and people don't really care about holiday events to begin with.
Which is not true given the volume.
Oh no, we know all of this
Christmas
is not true, but like if this were the case and that was the reason that the Pride event didn't happen this year, I would be disappointed. But I would get it, and it's a fine reason. But two things happen, right? The reason that this Pride event, as quoted by these anonymous employees, is that the Pride events are controversial and the game doesn't want to do anything controversial right now. Okay, that.
Okay, let's just not do any project rebalances this quarter then, or anything like that.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, yeah, exactly. Like, and also, I understand that standing up in the current world is more difficult than it has been in the previous year when the winds were like blowing in a different way. But the moment you pull out, if you pull out the moment it gets hard, then I mean, grow a spine. Like seriously, that to me is.
And there's
we have this concept that often gets talked about around minority groups, right? Which is the concept of allies. And this is if there's like a group, like typically a minority that struggles expressing themselves or getting recognition, they kind of need support from the people in the majority to help them and to call things out, right? So a great example is things like misgendering trans people. I know, very controversial example here given the current environment, but I'm going to use it anyway because it's important. If somebody is trans and people keep misgendering them and they have to continuously correct those people, that is emotionally very draining and very invalidating. There's a reason that there's a lot of mental health issues around that. Having somebody in a room who does the correcting for them or just calls it out means that these people feel less alone and supported, right? That is sort of the idea of an ally. It's someone who sort of speaks up for the minority so that they don't have to do the fight all by themselves. A company that changes their logo to be rainbow colored pretends to be an ally, but if you then pull out or don't really do anything to help those groups, then it's posturing.
Yeah, it's empty gestures.
I always believed that with the depth of the Pride events and the fact that they told real stories, that to me felt more like an ally than just changing, the logo to be rainbow. And now they give up. That to me is a huge disappointment, right?
Right. And I've seen, like, you look at so many other companies like that, and you see, the rainbow logo and whatnot, or the icon or what have you for the month of June, and it's like, okay, here we go again. Do they really mean it, right? It's
gonna be like these people are gonna remove the logo again at the end of Pride, and then they're not gonna be an ally until the end of Pride. Like it's
and I mean to highlight the hypocrisy that comes in some cases like that. You take Starbucks as an example. Starbucks across the Middle East never did that, but any other Starbucks in Western Europe or North America definitely did do that for June. And that
so it's
and
PR. Like
if
they were really an ally, they would do so like worldwide, right? And they would do so where it's hard. That's where companies and games can make the difference. And I mean, the argument that's being used is that like RuneScape should be an escape for everyone, right? It should be a place where everybody can feel at home. It should not be political.
There should be no rainbows. There should be nothing that ties into the real life.
Well, yeah, but that's bullshit. Like, if you are so emotionally insecure that the fact that the game has rainbows makes it no longer be an escape, go talk to a therapist, please, because at that point something is wrong with you and not with the game. Like, if you don't feel at home in your hometown anymore because they call it the crosswalk in rainbow colors, I mean, what harm does it do? And I know, I don't want to go into this right now. I know there's people who truly believe that there is like an agenda from these LGBT people that is harmful, and maybe there is, and that's a whole different point. But, 99.9% of all the people just want to be left alone and not be told that they don't have the right to exist.
Yeah, and that gets to the other, core point that we wanted to make with this here is that pride as it is doesn't have to be a conflict, and it isn't inherently one. It's made one by those people who have those issues that you were just highlighting.
It really is, right? Like I feel that people from like the LGBT
He hasn't had his
community.
coffee yet today.
I haven't had my coffee yet. LGBT. I mean, I should be saying LGBTIQ plus, but from that community,
We get your point. It's okay.
But like from that community's perspective, like really, there's never, meant to be any conflict, right? Like from my perspective, I just want to be left alone. Like just
yeah.
Like
yeah,
it just feels weird to me that the to put it sort of in meme format, right? Like me exists, right? And then somebody else, you can't do that. I'm like, what do you want me to do? What do you want me to do?
That's a dangerous
please don't
question
answer
to
that.
ask.
Please don't
Yeah.
answer that because
Yeah.
we don't get to
Yeah.
be on YouTube anymore if we talk about that particular topic. But
So what do you think the big shtick is with the community? Because we go back to 2017.
I think.
Hang on. I just want to mention Mod Wolf put that first Pride event in Old School. There were riots. There were people dressing up as lynch mobs. What has changed since then?
I mean, unfortunately, not much. Those people just went back into hiding. And now that the fact that Jagex has sort of pulled back, that was sort of the second point I was going to make, right? Like, I'm disappointed for the reason that Jagex does this, but like, what I struggle with the most is that even if it's not intended this way by Jagex, and I don't believe it is, they have given sort of a reason for all of those people to come back out of hiding. And now we're starting to see a lot of these people sort of strengthened in their opinion and
they've
spreading.
rolled the clock back effectively.
Yes. So, like, for me, the fact that the Pride events existed was a statement of Jagex saying we don't tolerate hate against these people, right? That was really the message that was sort of under everything. And now we're essentially seeing a situation where Jagex has said, you know what, we don't care. And all of a sudden, it's not like we're like this group is sort of being attacked all over the place by people because there's no well, I don't know if there's no consequences anymore, but
based on some of the names I've
they
seen,
feel strengthened and justified in their opinion now.
Yeah.
Which that's to me has been the hardest thing to see. It's the right opinion. The right response to me should be, I'm glad that they're gone, but I understand it was important for you, and I'm sorry they took it away from you. That's the response of somebody who didn't support Pride events in the first place should be.
Yeah. So which
is a very reasonable response.
Why do you think that there's so much community blowback here? Is it because Jagex is being hypocritical?
I think it was part of it is just it's holding a fuse to an already, it's already holding a fuse to a room that's filled with hydrogen, right?
Right.
like the entire situation has been sort of put in a very tense situation to begin with the way that the world is. So really all that it needed was a match to light it all up. But I also think that traditionally RuneScape has been a space where everybody can be themselves. So a lot of people have found their refuge here. And especially in the recent days, in the recent months, it might have been one of the few places where they still felt supported, and now that even that is sort of falling away.
Yeah, because I know the Reddit has been full of, memes and whatnot this week of, obviously, this is all in jest and all in the meme sense. Like they've put headlines out on meme news posts from June 11th, 1984, degaying the foot slot and even more Yama nerfs. And then the other one, November 4th, 2027, you can call them that now. After collecting feedback from hate groups across the nation, we've made some dialogue options. Some changes to the dialogue options for Karamjan NPCs. And the OSRS Reddit was filled with posts like that this entire week.
Look, I think like some people might find it like, oh, you're sort of trying to get internet points of like this controversy, and maybe that's the motivation. But I also appreciate that it sort of highlights the hypocrisy and like where does it like stop? And yeah, I need to add one more point, I think, on the fact that we talked about the fact that Pride isn't political. Let's say you do think that Pride is political, right? And I'm not going to be able to convince you as part of this show that it is. That does not necessarily mean it does not have a place in the game, because if you look at like 90% of the quests in RuneScape, like the Mauritania quest series is full of political commentary.
Yeah.
The Elf quest series is full of political commentary.
Yeah.
Like you only have to look like beyond like I don't know, half the people probably spacebar through the dialogue, but like the game is not the Cave Goblin. Oh my god, the Cave Goblin.
Yeah, that's
series.
I was going to say that's the biggest one.
Exactly. Like the entire game is full of political commentary, and that is realistically because I mean they're interesting stories, but games are art. That is an argument I will not budge on, and art is an expression of self, and who people are is a part of them. And the fact that a company says, that little gay bit that you have, please just don't express that bit, right? Because you might upset a few people.
Yeah. And
that's really like, if I had to summarize like the entire situation, that's what happens. And imagine being in that position. Imagine working on a game which is literally art and being told, oh, but you can't really express yourself.
Yeah.
Please stay within the bounds, color within the lines.
And that's one of the favorite things for me that Star Trek has always done, is that they've always mainly in the 1960s one I'm thinking about right now, really pushed those boundaries of what was not culturally acceptable at that point. And people highlight the cast and the characters of Star Trek Discovery, one of the more recent ones, and that went with what was acceptable for the times and didn't push the boundaries too far, but it showed again that world where it's just accepted of how things are.
Yeah, and here's the thing: the moment we're starting to curtailing these artists and telling them that they need to stay within the lines, right, you are removing a spark from the game, and I think everybody suffers from it, because it means that ultimately the game stops having the level of freedom that has gotten us some of the most amazing stories out there, because God forbid we are accidentally slightly offensive, right?
Or
like
making,
the moment you start walking that line of making people uncomfortable. I mean, maybe I'm unique and maybe I'm weird, but I think that like watching content and consuming content that makes me slightly uncomfortable is the best content that's out there, because it pushes the boundaries and it makes me question things and it makes me wonder things. And I know that in a sense, RuneScape is an
Not
escape.
everybody is like you.
No, and I understand that maybe RuneScape is not the, like, if they want to boot up RuneScape, that they don't want that particular thing to be challenged and tickled. And I don't say that RuneScape should be that particular platform, right? But at the same time, that's what the quests do already.
Yeah.
And you can't have a realistic and amazing world without tackling some of these tough questions.
I think that's a good point to point to move on. That summarizes a lot of where we were and gives our take on where this came from, and why the community acted
I wanna end with a quote from someone in the RSBNB community that's pretty active, Lemon, who said, "I'm not surprised, but I am sad and disappointed." That's sort of, yeah.
Yeah, and it highlights hypocrisy, and I think that's probably why the community has jumped on this so hard this week, whether or not they are members of the LGBTQ plus community. So.
You know what they also jumped hard on? Emberlight changes. Boom.
We were right with abuse early, abuse often, weren't we?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, the very fact their news post calls it cheesy Emberlight. I mean, come on.
Yeah, I find it hard to make an opinion on this. I maybe you have something smart to say about it. The problem is the fact that they call it cheesy Emberlight. It either they weren't aware that this was a strategy to begin with, or like what like. Surely they must have known that Emberlight is a thing.
Of course. I mean, it's another one of those items that is chained from the dark light that you get in like the Demon Slayer quest, right?
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
I mean,
exactly.
It's one of the items that people are gonna safeguard, like when we were having that conversation about the boots and whatnot. So it definitely should have been a consideration on this, because they said the special attack could be used to repeatedly drain Yama's offensive stats, basically turning him into a mildly annoying training dummy.
Yeah, big chicken essentially.
Yeah,
just like Corp. Yeah, no.
I mean, Yama came out a month ago. My question is, why did it take so long? Like you said, was it something that just slipped through, or was it not being abused enough that it was that much of an issue and we're just seeing the sensationalist headline in the patch notes?
I find it hard to say. I mean, I don't know if the change should have been made to begin with. Like, isn't this the intended use of Emberlight to begin with? It's now we're sort of creating, like...
I mean, it is a Demon Bane weapon, and one of the things I wanted to accomplish with Yama was giving people reasons to use Demon Bane things, including the Demon Bane spells.
Yeah, exactly. But now it's a little bit too strong, so we're creating an exception. Not even changing Emberlight or Yama. No, we're creating an exception. Like, like at some point, the game just becomes a patchwork of exceptions, like we already have.
And,
like
and
PvP.
it's hard to figure these out unless you troll the wiki.
Yeah. Like the other day, I found out that the blowpipe is 1 tick slower in PvP content as an attack speed. You can't see me gesturing right now.
No,
but I'm doing
the exact. Yeah.
Like, sure, there's a good reason to it, but so.
Tooltips.
It's
tooltips.
Tooltips might work. I know, but also like I don't know. The idea of Emberlight is like, was he completely harmless? If so, then maybe that's a problem, or maybe this was. You see, I can't even find the words to describe this.
And see, I'm not involved in the OSRS combat scene. If I were,
really, what a surprise!
if I were though, this would just drive me up the wall. Because it's like the same level of inconsistency of putting out a boss and then, realizing there's some edge case and then either making that edge case part of the fight or, like in this case, adding an exception to it. And it didn't happen in the first week. It was a month later.
I accept that edge cases might crop up, but the Emberlight special attack, seriously... Like I don't jump on the bandwagon of was this even Q8, right? Because the story's a little bit more complicated than that. But also, was this even Q8? Like,
and what about playtest? Because I know they brought people in to playtest the boss.
Yeah, like I feel this. I feel this is a thing that probably should have been addressed early on, and it was like a big oversight, or it wasn't an oversight, and they only decided later on that actually maybe we should have addressed that up front. And it's hard to say which because that's we can't see behind the scenes and what the discussions in the meeting rooms were like, unfortunately. Which sometimes I wish I could be a fly on the wall where.
You and I both.
Yeah, I feel the fact. Okay, what does it say here? Some of you clever clocks discovered. Right, that's what the news post says, which implies that they didn't know this. Which, yeah, okay, that's a problem. Is this a good change to put in the game eventually for the long-term integrity of this boss? Probably, but really we're now a month down the line. All of the integrity changes should really have made it into the game at this point.
And I mean, you would have had to use it repeatedly because the Emberlight consumes 50% special attack energy.
Right.
On one.
Well, we have surge potions now, so... Okay. Which maybe shows that surge potions were a poor idea to begin with, but...
Yeah. They also had to put a fix in because the glyphic attenuation contract was supposed to be melee only, but the special effects from the ruby and diamond bolts were able to be used. Those have now been disabled in this contract.
Yeah, well, that seems like an oversight.
Yeah, because that's a proc effect, and proc effects are notorious for landing in that sort of spot.
Spaghetti code.
20 plus years of spaghetti. Yay. But also speaking...
I'm glad I don't have to work on that code. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. I was hoping at RuneFest, and this is something that they probably wouldn't do. I was hoping that at some point, somewhere, there would have been like a showcase of, hey, this is how we use RuneScript, and this is how we create something. I thought that would have been fun, but maybe that's just me and 5 other people.
I think maybe the small stage had a few more. They showed... I don't know if they showed bits of... I think they showed bits of RuneScript there, so... It's not recorded, but the small little talk they did where they also talked about the animations.
Okay.
They went into a little bit more depth.
Yeah.
And they also had at RuneFest, though I don't know if they showed RuneScript specifically, where they one person was literally working on the mascot, the Devourer model, from the Sanctum quest? I don't know.
The Desert Finale.
Yeah, exactly. So it was really fun to sort of see them use the tools firsthand. There might have been a little bit of RuneScript there, but not much.
All right. Well, speaking of spaghetti code, we're going to move on and we're going to talk a little bit about where mobile's at here in 2025 because there was a post that was put out by
Well, also the news post showed a few screenshots of big achievements. Somebody did the Inferno on mobile.
Yeah. And Mod Genghis is looking for more mobile feedback. And that really brings us to the question of, where is mobile at here in 2025? I'll use mobile maybe once a month. but you use it quite often.
Yeah, almost daily.
So how is
Almost
it?
daily.
How is it doing?
Um, Honestly, the update we got earlier this year, I think it was still, really helped. I think the mobile client feels a lot more mature. It doesn't feel as much as like a desktop client sort of
Scrunched
cramped
down,
into.
right?
Yeah, like they have like more like dedicated UI. It all feels fine. I have some random disconnects sometimes that I don't have on the desktop client. I don't know if that's a client problem or a Wi-Fi problem. Who knows? But
Yeah.
all in all, it works, right? Like it does what it needs to do.
Hmm. Yeah. Like I see mobile as something that I'll use if I, need to do a quick herb run or change a GE offer or something like that. But beyond
Yeah,
that,
that's what I do. I
okay.
I am reasonably strict about doing my herb runs. They're my main source of income right now. Because it's literally as simple as printing money. Um, so I will do herb runs multiple times a day, which like I can do it during work on like a quick break. Basically, I use this like a quick break, or if I have like 10 minutes between meetings, I can do a quick run. And for that, it's great. Um, but I also last weekend, I was away from home all weekend, um, which essentially means, in my case, I sort of got rid of my laptop and replaced it with an iPad. Some sort of
Brave move.
I can, yeah. I overall I'm happy with that move, right? It supports basically all of the things I want to do away from home, even gaming to an extent. But it does mean I'm sort of limited to the mobile client while playing all week, which I played a bunch. We'll get to that in a little bit. What I did, maybe, or maybe I should talk about it now because
No,
it
we'll do it
actually
after. We'll tie it all in.
well, it helps my
Okay.
argument, right?
Okay, go for it.
Because and this is always the problem I have. Like doing a herb run, I'm probably gonna be a little bit faster if I do the herb run on like my desktop, right? But the alternative is I'm not gonna turn on my desktop during a 10-minute break from work. So I'm doing the herb run to begin with, and that's the value that mobile has. I do something that otherwise I wouldn't even do in the first place. But when I have like an entire afternoon, just me and my iPad playing RuneScape, what do I do with that time, right? I can't really do every single thing because for most pieces of content, I can find a reason why it is highly inefficient to do it on mobile.
Right. Do you use a mouse with your iPad when you go on those
No,
weekend trips? No. Okay.
no, no, no. I have a trackpad though. Though I use a mix of the trackpad and actually tapping on the screen. But like something like barbarian fishing, fine, I can do that on mobile. Like it's actually easier on mobile because I can just tap the things to drop them, using the tap to drop functionality. So that's fine. But most pieces of content, there are plugins these days to make them more efficient.
Bingo.
The content I settled on doing last weekend was Guardians of the Rift, which isn't super reliant on plugins. But I made several mistakes throughout, playing it multiple games. You can't see how many runes are in your rune pouches. I have a plugin that shows me the number of runes in the rune pouches, meaning that I sometimes missed filling up all of my rune pouches. I couldn't see when my rune pouches were about to degrade, so sometimes one of my rune pouches degraded in the middle of the game, which meant I lost time having to use NPC contact. It is much harder to see which of the guardians are active on my RuneLite client. I have like a nice plugin that makes like a really brightly colored highlight around the guardian, rather than having to, look at sort of the glow inside, which is
Yeah.
really not that easy to see. And finally, the RuneLite client also counts down to or counts up since the last portal to the huge fragments, so you can sort of know if you have enough time to do another run or not. So it's a whole bunch of information that you miss when you play on mobile. And I was able to play reasonably efficient, but I would probably have gotten like about a point more on average each game if I had played on mobile with these plugins. So it kind of feels bad playing this on mobile.
Yeah, and that's the same feeling I get when I use the official client. And we can turn this into a discussion about plugins and other clients if we want to, but the point is that it's inherently more difficult to have a plugin on mobile than it is on the desktop.
Yeah. So that makes it so hard for me. Like there's like a list of goals that I have. Like in my client at this point, I think I'm notorious for the fact that I literally have like a to-do board for old school goals. Yeah, what says I'm a nerd more than that, right? But like so many things I don't really want to do on mobile because I know that I can do them 20% faster elsewhere. And there's very little content besides the most boringest of stuff that doesn't really benefit from that. So where does that put mobile as sort of a client for doing long-term goals? Like I know some people, like in a news post, somebody did like Theater of Blood and Inferno and Colosseum on mobile, and maybe
Dragon
that's
Slayer 2
mobile, or maybe that is a particular that is a particular challenge they set themselves. But like if you had the choice, like the actual choice, like would you do Dragon Slayer on mobile?
No, of
Dragon
course
Slayer
not.
2?
I would not. And this is the case for any version of RuneScape. I won't touch combat on mobile.
Yeah, I have it on my to-do list to try at least like a Hespori kill on mobile, because that would be nice to see if that's possible.
Yeah,
It
that
probably
could be
is,
doable.
because it's a non-dangerous boss for me at this point. But yeah, it where does it put mobile in the picture?
I mean,
and I don't know.
I think there's an unfortunate reality that RuneScape is not a mobile game, and the fact that
but here comes the point. Is it the mobile client or is it the official client that's holding it back?
I would say it's the official client.
There you go.
Because they want to move people to that official client eventually, because it's a better technology stack for them to work with. And it also, they said, well, we're going to help you move. We're going to, allow the creation of plugins and whatnot. And we saw their first venture into that foray with the menu entry swapper.
Yeah, and the menu entry swapper, I think, has been acknowledged by the team as being shit.
Which is good
like
that they
know
did. Good that they did that.
It's good, and I'm glad that they did. I'm glad they're not, running circles around it and pretending it's like the best since sliced bread.
Oh, good.
Best
That's an expression over there.
bread.
Right on.
But it is like basically what it came down to is they worked on it. It wasn't working very well. They got more time to work on it. It still wasn't working very well, but they didn't get more time to work on it. So they just launched what they did because that was better than not launching it. Was it though? I don't know. I played a whole bunch of Guardians of the Rift, and the problem is, like, if you use menu entry swapper on some things, which I do, the left click options are just completely messed up. Like, if a player is in front of a thing that you menu entry swapped, the menu entry swap somehow applies to the players that's in front of it, meaning that the left click option on a player for me, it was for the longest time. It was like high score lookup, which is reasonably harmless, but also was spamming a whole bunch of things. So I removed that as an option, and now the left click option on players is follow. you can see how that messes me up during Guardians of the Rift, trying to
Yeah.
deposit some runes, and all of a sudden I'm on the other side of the arena. I'm like, what went wrong?
To me that looks like there's something with the way they implemented the indexing of the menu items internally.
Yeah,
on
exactly.
That.
Exactly.
But then, with that is such a broken piece of code. It's like, why would you even, like you said, why would you even ship that?
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe they should have called it like an experimental feature and people can still use it. Like there's ways around it, and look, I don't entirely blame them for releasing what they did. It's what people would probably have asked for anyway. Like give us the broken version, at least it's something. And on average it probably still saves me time because I can left click my birdhouses and all of that. But if this is the level of development that they're going to apply to the plugins, where you're running out of time, you ran out of time to build the plugin system, just launch what you have. Like, we're never going to get the level of plugins.
That's not going to bode well, and that holds back, like you said, the official client.
Yeah,
like I'd love to use the official client for OS, because it gets away from that Java client in the background, which RuneLight does a good job of abstracting away, but you can still tell.
Oh yeah, and I'm gonna be very curious to see like all of the graphical improvements that they're doing. It looks really nice. I'm not a big sucker for like HD mode, and I don't care for it. But
there might be a reason for them to get their butt in gear on some of this, because it was announced this week with the WWDC stuff, the Apple developer conference, that we have effectively 2 more versions of macOS where the Intel universal binaries are accepted, and everything after that will have to be Apple Silicon. So what that means for
but nobody games on Mac, Shane. You shouldn't be.
No. The point is that by leaning into that and embracing that, it can have a net benefit potentially of helping the iOS client. Because in theory, you should be able to use the same code for the iOS client that you could use on an Apple Silicon client for what they're doing. So maybe Apple giving them a kick in the pants might help a bit.
The 2 people that can play on macOS get to play on a good client.
No, but I'm saying it should also, the iOS benefits should trickle down to that side as well, right. Because they're not going to get rid of the iOS client. That's something that's just going to be perennial.
No, that's no, exactly. That's true. And yeah, we'll see. To me, they need to figure out what they want to do with mobile. Like either they, and to be honest, like the plugin system is on the official client, whereas menu entry swapper really only applies to mobile. Yeah. So it is a different case. So I don't want to, be very fatalistic about it, but they do need to really learn the lesson. That it's a hard lesson to learn. I know this from building our own game, that things like systems and things like engine stuff will always take more time than you think, and you can't.
You really need to get it right.
You need to get it right. You should not try and take shortcuts, and it will slow you down in the short term, but in the long term, that's really the only viable solution.
Yeah, and it goes back to the general post that was given, that if you have feedback on mobile, you're a mobile user. There's this post that was put out. You can offer your opinion on it for where you land on mobile, and I think it's an interesting discussion to have, because I believe the majority of people who are playing RuneScape in general, both versions, are on desktop. So it's like, well, why do we care about the percentage on mobile? Well, it's an important stream for Jagex. In terms of driving members, all you got to do is look at the player count and see how the old school numbers spiked when mobile came out.
Yeah.
So,
look, one of the things that this post says, which I think is huge, is that we're going to get the character switching on mobile, which to me, that's also one of the main things that's been holding me back.
Yes, absolutely.
Like, especially being able to just jump on my Iron Man where I have a bunch of quests to do that I don't care about and aren't too hard. Like, I'm happy to do that on mobile.
Rather than
a bunch of low-level content. Rather than
diving through, like, their web login thing you have to do. So.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that to me is huge. They are looking at portrait mode, which that's an interesting one. That's not one I would have expected to be really a
No, but it's interesting when you consider old school and, the fact that, that the game could be played in portrait mode. I'd be curious to see just what the UI looks like for that.
Yeah, there was a mock-up somewhere on Reddit, not in this thread though, but
All right.
yeah, I'm just scrolling through like locking menu panels, less line of chat, yeah. Being able to minimize old school on iPhone for longer than 10 seconds, that's
Yeah.
that's unfortunately that's an OS
Yeah.
restriction.
Yeah.
I understand it. I wish I could quickly. I'm gonna admit I sometimes like I have my iPad open on something and I have to grab my phone to go to the wiki to look something up because I don't want to tab out of the client.
Yeah, that's an Apple thing.
But that's it's the same on Android. Android has the same
okay.
problem. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Well,
But yeah, it looks like people are really appreciative of the mobile client, and they should be, because let's be honest, the fact that they made a 20-year-old game run on mobile to begin with and actually make it feel reasonably good after this year's updates is already pretty impressive.
yeah, that's a win. That's a win. So, what have you been up to on mobile? If there's anything else beyond
Guardians of the Rift.
okay. Anything else beyond that? Beyond that, in the herb runs?
No, not really.
Okay.
I need to do Guardians of the Rift because like Runecraft is by far my lowest skill. Probably will be for the foreseeable future. Though it's slowly catching up with Slayer.
Yeah,
Yay.
I don't envy the rune crafting training that's there, or the Slayer training for that matter. But that I think speaks to the larger discussion to come right now about the Questcape and where we began this show. Go ahead.
Yeah. I mean, people who paid attention in the last episode will notice that I spoke a little bit about Duke Sucellus as if I had fought Duke Sucellus myself. But also, if you have listened to me during the Leaks episodes, I never took the Fremennik region, so how could I? Yeah, I actually finished the quest. And
you did, I did not, and that's I feel like that kind of goes into what I said earlier in the show as well. I'm not a combat person in this game. And,
no.
It was getting to a point for me where the combat in the game was actively detracting from how I was enjoying it. So I said to you a few weeks ago, go ahead, go for it. And you did after we did the Theater of Blood quest, because I did the first Hespori fight in there and got the egg in the Araxi chamber, and then we need to do the Theater of Blood run through, and you could do that solo. I watched your playthrough on that. I looked at some videos and I thought, I don't know that I feel up to that. And then, what comes after that is Dragon Slayer 2, and then Desert Treasure 2, and that just led me to the thing that, I've come far enough for what I wanted to do. I played the main quests that I initially set out to play back when Old School first piqued my interest on the floor at RuneFest 2018. And I'm okay with that, and I told you to go along ahead.
Yeah, and I did. You told me this on a Wednesday before I had a 4-day weekend, so I did not touch grass that long weekend. I did, I think, eventually on Sunday, but yeah, no, I went for all of them. Like you said, I don't know if we talked about the Theater of Blood in the previous.
No, we didn't.
4 weeks ago, but I got through that reasonably easily. You can do it in entry mode, which is significantly easier. Got through all of the bosses actually without much trouble. You managed to saved most of my supplies, which is great. The only time I died was Furzik, and I figured out it was largely because I didn't have enough damage. It wasn't like I was dealing with the mechanics okay, but the chip damage just started adding up, and
okay.
I didn't have the prayer points to keep vigor active. That was the thing that killed me at Furzik. Yeah, that's it. After that, I did Dragon Slayer 2, which I was a little bit scared of, but actually I got most of the fights first try. I really like it. It's a really good quest. I don't know how much you've read into the lore at all.
Yeah, I read more into Dragon Slayer 2 than Desert Treasure 2. And, I think based on what we saw with the addendum, because you saw the addendum that came in after While Gothic Sleeps, we talked about that a bit there. And I think that it really does underscore again what Old School has done a good job in doing of keeping, the mythical creatures like the Dragonkin at the end of that quest relatively, mysterious, and still allowing you to have a good quest about them. That is a, huge step and a leap forward from where the first Dragon Slayer was all those years ago.
I feel that this Dragon Slayer 2 really captured how Wild Gothic Sleeps felt when it came out in RS3.
And
I know I said it didn't really hold up when I released it this year.
Yeah, I remember our discussion. We were wondering about that.
But I feel Dragon Slayer 2 captures that same energy. It feels really epic, but way more grounded than some of the things that RS3 has been doing in the last few years. It's still very much a quest about people, rather than the end of the world. And there is a world
end of the world, mystical, cosmic entity, those sorts of things. Yeah,
but like it. The nice thing is that the people you sort of get and use for reinforcements are allies that you have sort of gotten to know through your adventures. So it closes the arc quite definitively for some of them. But yeah. So yeah, I liked it. I also think the combat was pretty good. Vorkath, interesting fight. I need to go back there, but I'm sort of saving up for a Dragon Hunter crossbow so I can go back there more efficiently.
Yeah, I think that's smart, given the crossbow landscape in the game.
Yeah. The only boss fight I had some trouble with was the final fight, Gorfak. Which
I watched that one, and I watched the amount of sweat that was needed for the low level and iron setup, and that was part of my decision.
Yeah,
for the decision I made.
I didn't think it was so bad, really, honestly.
Well, you know how I feel about movement.
Yeah, yeah. I did die twice at Gorfak, though. The first one largely was I just started off wrong. And this is the case with combat in Old School, I feel, is you need to sort of get into the rhythm. It's a rhythm game. And if you fall out of it, it's sort of hard to get back into it. So I got overwhelmed basically immediately and died. And I was like, oh, that's fine. Sometimes you just need like a false start just to take the edge of how sweaty it is, right?
Yeah. Are you counting
because
ticks?
The second time... No, I'm not.
Okay.
No. But the second time I went, I forgot my anti-fire. So that was a very quick attempt.
And I mean, you're lucky. You can just go to the GE and buy the highest anti-fire. You're not running on an iron where you gotta, farm all that out.
Yeah, exactly. So that was that. But then I managed to kill that. So that was a good fight. But yeah, I thought it was a great conclusion to the story. But is it a conclusion? Dun dun dun.
Exactly. And, I was just on the edge of my seat when Well Gothic Sleeps came out, and granted, we didn't get that cutscene back then. So I looked that up, and yeah, that was my same reaction to that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Desert Treasure 2.
No, Grim Tales.
I mean, okay.
Forgetful Tale. Oh god, what a dumb quest Forgetful Tale is. It has not aged well.
Right. And that's why I said, you asked, are there any others that you care about? And I said, no, not really.
Grim Tales is fun though. Grim Tales is a fun, like that there's very little, jank in that. Rat Catchers. The second hardest quest in the game, obviously. Oh, the patience you need for that. I struggled with that quite a lot, but I did manage to get capture only like 10 times, so. And then there's a treasure too. Boy.
The Elder Horn. I think that's old school's only interaction with an Elder artifact.
No, Jazz, Stone of Jazz. And
oh, right. We have that now.
I like Desert Treasure 2 as well. I don't know if it's my favorite quest, but it also does a really good job at not overextending itself. In each of the 4... I don't want to go too much into lore because then we might have to put spoiler warnings on this, and I kind of want to go into this a little bit more deeper than that we have time for right now. But I like that each of the sort of the 4 paths, you deal with one of the sort of unfinished business branches in your quest list. So this is not really spoilers because like required quests, but like you follow up on what happened at the Temple of the Eye. You follow up what happened at Camdozar.
We were wondering about that Temple of the Eye thing when we first did that.
Exactly. You follow up what happened at the Sequence of the North, and you follow up what happened with Garden of Death, which that's still my all-time favorite quest. That was not my favorite section of the quest for reasons of, oh my god, it's a stealth section. Oh, yeah, that was the first of the 4 I did. The Stranglewood is basically a zombie-infested place where you need to remain... You can only walk, you need to stay out of sight. The moment you get spotted, like, all of them start running after you. And it's like, it's nightmare fuel. It is nightmare fuel. I managed to get through that, though. And then it was time for the first Desert Treasure 2 boss. The Whisperer. Got it on the second try. Very chaotic, but I didn't mind the fight. It was sort of interesting. Had interesting mechanics. The fight is very fair, if that makes sense.
In the regards of the mechanics telegraph, that sort of thing. And
exactly.
You can, if you know what you're doing, you can bypass. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Like all of the mistakes are mine to make, essentially. So that was the Whisperer. Then it was time for the Leviathan. That was the second boss. Again, very long puzzle section. Very much a sequel to Desert Treasure 1, right? But much bigger, but also more well developed. Like there's like run energy restoration everywhere, for example, which is lovely.
Yeah, you sent me some of the screenshots of that in terms of how that works, and if you're going to do that, I think that makes sense in this day and age.
Yeah, I did look up the answers to the puzzles. I think if you do this without a guide, oh my god, you need to take like a week to finish this quest because it's big. But Leviathan, I actually got first try.
Which I think surprised some people, didn't it?
Yeah, I think it is considered one of the harder ones.
Yeah, because I've heard things about the Leviathan as well. It's not being
the Leviathan boss is super interesting. I'm going to quickly talk you through the combat encounter because it's really simple to explain. So the Leviathan basically does like bursts of damage where it shoots like blue and green balls at you.
Okay.
And you basically need to. It's basically Jad, right? You need to play a switch between the two.
Okay.
So it starts out with like, I don't know the exact tick amount. I think it's like 6 ticks between attacks you have to switch.
Well, that's a decent amount of time.
Then the next burst it does, it's 5 ticks.
Oh.
Then 4 ticks. Then 3 ticks. And you're getting to the point where, like, you know what? It's getting a little bit hard to deal with. So what do? You use a shadow spell on the Leviathan, which freezes it in place. You run around it, so you're at the backside, because it always looks at you, otherwise it's too fast to turn. You hit it in the back on its weak spot, and it resets. Now it's 6 ticks again. Then 5, then 4. Until you're uncomfortable, you freeze it again, you can run around. That's the entire fight, essentially.
You know, that doesn't sound that bad. And that's not necessary. And that doesn't sound like it's the grid-based movement stuff that I was struggling with within Sins of the Father.
No, it's not a very movement-based. It's a very prayer-based one.
Yeah.
Then there's like an enrage phase, unfortunately, where there's like a little orb that circles around the map, and if you are within like 3 or 5 tiles of it, you do like your minimum damage on the Leviathan is 20% of your max hit.
Oof.
But if you are outside of it, like the Leviathan hits you just much harder. So it's basically move, click a lot. So that's where the movement comes in a little bit.
Right.
But you don't have to pray a switch as much anymore. You can just camp one of the two and just eat through the rest. So yeah, overall, I thought it was a boss I would absolutely hate. Love the mechanic, very unique. And all of the 4 bosses felt very unique in their mechanics. But I can also see how with Scurious and the Moons of Peril and Hue, like
they're training
those,
you for those sorts of things.
Yes, it's helping. It's working. Third boss was Duke Sikelis. Duke Sikelis, I am so glad that they're making those quality of life issues. I don't like the scaling part of it. But other than that, was fairly straightforward section. Also, the prison escape, another massive puzzle where you have to run around so much. If you don't know where you're going, I feel that the environment's a little bit too big.
Mm-hmm.
It's basically Secrets of the North, that puzzle, but you know, the arena is just massive, and at some point, you get randomly attacked by who's the Major out there again? Is it an Akra? No.
In where?
I forget. In Secrets of the North.
Oh.
Doesn't matter.
No.
Doesn't matter. Or is it Zamarigo?
No, I don't think it's Zamarigo.
It doesn't matter. Hazil? No.
No, definitely not Hazil. Yeah, no, you're right. It's Jalin.
Jalin, there you go. Yes, it's Jalin.
It started with a J.
But there, yeah, that boss fight, other than that, was fairly straightforward. It's also movement-based. It's flinching, essentially. I died once because there's 2 special attacks, and you do different things during the special attacks, and I got my wires crossed, essentially. Final path was the Kamdozar one with the Whisperer, and oh boy, that's a scary puzzle.
As in you can die during it, or just scary difficult? Yes,
you can die. It's also scary. I basically told you it's Underground Pass vibes.
Okay.
But now imagine that being built in like the 2020s, right? Rather than
yeah. Okay.
That's the vibe I got from it. Basically, you move into the shadow world to do certain things that affect the real world.
Ooh.
But while you're in the shadow world, your insanity goes up. And if you get attacked by the monsters there, your insanity goes up very quickly. And if you hit like 100 insanity, you get, I don't know if you die or you get bumped out. Yeah.
You didn't let it happen.
I didn't let it happen, no. And then you basically make like different items, like a torch that allows you to dispel like shadow tendrils, or like a blocker that makes you safe in the shadow world. So you place like the items in the real world, and then they affect the shadow world, so you could create like safe zones, or like a lure that lures the monsters away from you. So it was like really interesting, and it felt almost a little bit like a Zelda dungeon,
Okay.
which normally I would like.
I was
But
going to
again,
ask
it
because
felt
you normally have
it,
you have experience with that.
but it felt a little bit too much again. Like it felt very punishing if you go to the wrong way. You sort of had to backtrack a lot. It wasn't really clear where to go. Like the signposting wasn't quite there. So like the idea, I would love maybe even like a full quest that is just that, but then developed a little bit further. And then the Whisperer, and that's the boss I struggled with most, actually.
So you saved the best for last.
Unfortunately, yeah, I really struggled with the Whisperer. I think it took me like 5 or 6 attempts. Here's the frustrating thing. I died, and then the Whisperer died like right after me, and it didn't count.
Oh, that's always annoying.
Yeah. Again, the Whisperer, I kind of like the boss fight. It has really interesting mechanics. It has prayer switches. It has movement. It's basically, you get a barrage of like 3 things. So it's like magic, 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 right? For example, that's how it starts with. And then there's an attack that makes you move. Then it's like ranged, ranged, ranged. And there's a magic like thing you have to move. And like as the fight progresses, the patterns get more complicated. So it might be like magic, ranged magic, and you have to. I think you have like 2 ticks to switch, so it's definitely a lot sweatier. And you have to move, and you have to attack again. So there's a lot to keep track of, but it's one of those fights where you can get into the pattern, right? If you get into the rhythm, it's actually really easy. You can avoid almost all.
And that's always the sense that I felt with things like Jad, and in particular, the tormented demon at the end of While Gothic Sleeps. And even the and even the Guardian in Song of the Elves too.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and I kind of love that because it makes you feel competent once you get the pattern down. But then there's the Unrage phase, and that's the one that kept killing me. Because all of a sudden you need to switch prayers, and you need to keep moving because you're continuously being attacked where you are, and you need to keep eating because there's a bunch of unavoidable damage, and it was just chaos. But yeah, I managed to kill that, and then the final fight, you kill a bunch of wights.
Gee, and who likes wights?
Yeah, not gonna spoil anything. That fight I had to take three tries on as well.
Like as you were going through this, you were sending me little tidbits, and I got one of them, and I missed the other one on that. And we won't say exactly what that was, but the one I got was specifically around the question of the wights. So
yeah, but overall, I've gotten a really good appreciation of the combat here of the game. People were surprised at how few tries I took. Like Whisperer 2nd try, Leviathan 1st try, Duxicellus 2nd try, Whisperer 5th try, Final Fight 3rd try. Which, given how much some people have struggled with Desert Treasure 2, surprised a bunch of people, even though I'm not even super high stats either. So, and I think it's really gotten down to the fact that I think I have sort of tuned into the rhythm of old school combat pretty well at this point.
And see, even for me, on things like Scurious and Jad on leagues, it's still something that I have to, overthink for it, right? So
you need to get to a point where it becomes, like what I recommend for all of the people who are like wanting to do Jad, go and sit there and pray. I know everybody says this, right, on like videos and all of that, but it really helps. You can go onto, if you go to the quest speedrunning world and you do Desert Treasure 2, I believe, the initial outfit it gives you includes a fire cape, so you can get into the inner area of the Tsar City, which means you get access to the challenges, and the first challenge is literally kill Jad. So I get put into arena with just Jad, and really just go sit there and pray a switch. Just do it, right? That's the only thing you have to do. And at some point, it just clicks. That's it.
Yeah.
And I think
And
most bosses are a little bit like that.
Yeah, and then there's other things to, get over too, but this isn't the podcast for that, for me, to air those grievances.
For me, it came to a culmination because now I have my quest cape, which still feels unreal, to be honest. But I have it. It's in my bank. So now I'm working towards grinding for Elite Diaries, but also the mini quests, of course. So one of them was Into the Tombs, which basically meant doing a Tombs of a Mascot run, which I did with a bunch of people.
Which you had done previously on Leagues.
Yeah, exactly. So I wasn't really planning on doing it this weekend in a solo run, but then there was a clan event where we went with a bunch of learners, and that went fine. We did an entry mode 1, we did a normal mode 1 even. And again, I feel reasonably comfortable at it. Like, I died, sure, a few times, but I don't know, I'm starting to get an appreciation for the combat and the mechanics, and I'm actually really impressed with how many different ways and combinations they have found to use the relatively simple combat system.
Well, see, and that's good, because I'm glad that you were able to do that, because I tried to do that with both Leagues. I tried to do that with our various quests and some of the bosses that we got along the way, and it just never got to that point of clicking for me. So
yeah. It's like Neo, right? I'm seeing the source code. No, I'm not gonna be that pretentious, but yeah, I like it. I'm hoping to develop my skills. I still have the Frozen Door left, of course, as a mini quest. So that means Gold Wars dungeon bosses, which are different. But Tombs of a Mascot is fun.
Oh, if you can do Tombs and you can do Jad, the God Wars bosses will be fine.
Oh yeah. I'm gonna be honest. I mostly just don't want to do the kill count to get into the rooms.
Yeah, that's annoying. And Cireon is also kind of annoying as well. That's the one I find most annoying on OS.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, no, I'm having a good time, and it. I mean, I'm not gonna say the game has just started, but it does definitely. You're gonna have to start looking at goals a little bit differently when the quest cape is out of the way.
Yeah, and I think that's a good thing, progression wise. Just the fact that the mid game is so big and fat in old school. But
definitely now it's end game. Well, not end game yet, but late game for me, right?
Yeah.
Like if you look at some of the, there are best in slot items that I own right now,
which is wonderful.
Yeah. So I'm definitely in late game now, which is good. I wish I was max combat already. That's like a grind I'm not looking forward to. But yeah.
Pest control on the menu?
Well, yeah, because I want Elite Void, but
yeah.
And I need to do a bunch of Slayer, so it doesn't really make sense to do combat training outside of Slayer.
Yeah.
At this point.
Right. Okay.
Anyway, it's I don't know. Sorry, it was a long update from my side, but doing all of the quests was a lot. I had good fun. I think the quests are good. I am looking forward to the fact that I got all of the jank out of the way now, and all of the quests that I will do in the future on this account are going to be new, or worst case migrated from RS2, I guess, but with a layer of quality of life on them.
That's a good way of looking at it when you consider that.
Mm-hmm.
And, we should have some fun ones coming with Varlamore as well whenever that does inevitably
and
arrive.
Sailing.
Right, sailing as well. Well, I think that's pretty much the end of the prepared remarks for this week's podcast. Is there anything else you want to say before we depart?
No.
Okay. Good.
See you in the Myths Guild.
Yeah, the Myths Guild is fun, and that's part of the reason why on the last leagues I chose Kandarin and Fremenic. I was one of the 2% of Kandarin enjoyers out there.
I love the Biv's cape, and I want to combine it with my Quest cape because I like it better. But
Yeah.
I want to get the Quest cape.
And the
I
Quest
feel
cape is
that.
just so damn iconic, too, right?
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Well, folks, we'll be back, of course, in 2 weeks' time. Let us know what you thought on the Pride discussion, and of course, your thoughts on cheesy Emberlight and where things stand with the mobile client right now. If you're much of a mobile gamer out there, we're always interested to hear from our listeners on anything we talk about. You can do that in the Discord at update.show/discord, or on YouTube at youtube.com/@OSRS update, or even in the Friends chatting game at BitsBytes. But that's it for this edition of the Old School RuneScape Update. We'll see you guys again in 2 weeks' time. Take care, everyone. See you then.
Bye.